Hey everybody, welcome to episode 1 of Face of the Community. And I'm super excited to have Andy Searles here. If you don't know Andy, you're in for a treat. If you do know Andy, get excited to hear everything that he's doing. So Andy, for everyone out there that might not know you, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So thanks for having me on the show, Tim. I'm really excited that you're doing this. I think anything that we can do to kind of shrink our community by getting to know each other better is valuable and helpful. But my name is Andy Searles. I live in Casselberry. My primary vocation is that I pastor a church called Church Together. But a big part of who our church is that we're very involved in the life of the community. So that life has taken me on numerous adventures around Central Florida and into numerous organizations that I work with and volunteer for and give time to and hopefully lend some encouragement to as well. I'm originally from England. I spent the first half of my life there, born, raised, and educated there before coming to Florida in the late 90s. And since being here, my family has grown. Tracy and I married in 2000. We got 2 incredible kids, my son who is 14 and my daughter who is 17.
Awesome. Well, thank you for telling us a little bit about you. So being that you come from England, I'm guessing that you are a fan of football. I'm not talking about the American type.
Absolutely. The kind of football where you actually use your feet. I think that's one of the biggest things that British people get frustrated about when Americans call football, because you primarily, use your hand. But yeah, I'm a big fan of the football with the feet. I grew up watching, playing, supporting, engaging with my local team. My local team in England is a team called Ipswich Town, and following your club is a very tribal experience. When they win, like, you are ridiculously happy and everything is right with the world. But if your team loses, then you sink into a deep depression. And of course, because England is so small and soccer is so big and there are so many teams, there are a lot of rivals. So it's always fun to poke fun at your rivals if you're winning, but you got to be prepared to take it if you're losing as well. But big soccer fan, and that soccer fandom has translated to some work over here that I do with Orlando City. I've been in and around the organization from when the club started and serve as the team chaplain, which has allowed me to get to know many players and many people within the sport, and allowed me to help shape some elite athletes to become successful off the field as well as on it as well.
Yeah, that's super cool. And I'm sure you were excited when they brought the Orlando City Soccer Club to Orlando. So I've seen soccer grow a lot in the last, 10, 15 years?
You bet. I think there's obviously a number of things that I missed from not living in the UK, some certain foods, and most definitely my family, but my football was one of them as well. And so when kind of football moved to Orlando, I was a happy guy.
But that's not all that you're involved in. You're also part of Leadership Seminole, correct?
I am. I've served for a number of years on the executive council at Leadership Seminole. And in July this year, my term expires there, and I've been invited to join the board there. And I really appreciate what Leadership Seminole does, because it's a kind of core belief of mine that everything rises and falls on leadership. If something is going well, it's often because there's a good leader behind it. If something isn't going well, it's often because there's a poor leader behind it. So the opportunity to kind of be involved with and raise the bar of leadership within our county is an opportunity that I'm very grateful for, and I cherish and see as an important stewardship, because when a leader gets better, everything gets better.
Yeah, and the thing I'm most amazed with is everything that you do for our community. Leadership Seminole, you obviously with the Orlando City Soccer. I made a list, by the way, because I had to make a list, and it's rather long. You obviously your church, the Casselberry Chamber of Commerce. You're involved with that a lot. You started the podcast, What's Up Casselberry, and you were even selected for the Superintendent Search Committee.
Yeah, well, there's a saying that I learned a long time ago. I'm not sure where or who from, but it just resonated me. Resonated. What am I trying to say? Resonated with me. And that phrase is that a rising tide lifts all boats. So if one part of the community gets better, then the other parts can get better as well. So I'm really enjoying kind of flitting around different parts of the community, saying, hey, how can I add value to what's happening here? How can I help kind of raise you? Because if you get better, what happens over here is going to get better, and over here will get better as well. And so kind of locally in Casselberry, we do that. You mentioned the podcast. My friend Drew Taylor, Pastor Drew Taylor from Willow Creek Church, and I have hosted for the last 18 months a podcast called What's Up Casselberry. And our goal there is to ask the question, what's up Casselberry? There are some great things happening in our city, but we found that not everybody in our community knows about them. So we said, what kind of medium can we create to help people who don't know learn about the good things that are happening? And so that's really taken off. We've had several thousand listeners over the last 18 months, and grateful to kind of fill some of those communication holes. So that happens locally. You also mentioned are very involved in the school district. Finding the next superintendent was a challenge, but I'm excited that we've got one, and we've got a real good one who I think is going to lead our district to even higher heights. Involved community-wide with Leadership Seminole as well. I currently serve on the equity board of the school district, and I've also involved in a little project called the Better Man organization, which is something I don't kind of speak about as much as I should, but the goal there is really to help men get better. And a couple of years ago, we kind of reached our peak, we thought, thus far at the UCF Arena when we rented that out and held this men's conference. Last year, we couldn't do that because no one was allowed to meet. And so we went digital and virtual, and we had about 15,000 men around the world connect with our organizations. We challenged them to become better men. This year, on September 18th, we are hosting our next Better Man, and we're just putting together some of the final pieces. But our speakers at the moment include Denzel Washington and Toby Mack and Kaká, who is a global soccer player that I became friends with through Orlando City. So I got stuff going on kind of like uber local, community wise, and then starting to kind of push nationally as well. But again, it's all driven from this idea that a rising tide lifts all boats. And if we can raise the tide, then everybody gets better.
Which, going back on the Better Men conference that you put together, so the one at UCF, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, isn't that where you had Mackenzie Milton, and he was able to meet the USF player that caused the horrific knee injury for the first time since that accident?
Yeah, one of the things we try to do with that event is each year give it a theme. Sometimes we lean more into that theme than others. But this year the theme was forgiveness, right? Realizing that we all carry a lot of pain, a lot of brokenness, a lot of confusion from our past. And sometimes a lot of the healing around that comes with forgiveness. And so for UCF, it made sense to have Mackenzie Milton there, and what an incredible young man he was. We also got some connections with some folks in Tampa as well at USF, right? Where I think the young man, I can't remember his name right now, was playing. So we reached out to him. And we said, hey, we're doing this thing. Would you like to be a part of it? And on stage, we brought them together for the first time. And there was some forgiveness that was able to be shared and given and received. And it really was a powerful moment. Also on the platform that night, we had a gentleman speak from the First Baptist Church in South Carolina, where there was the church shooting. And his wife was actually murdered by the gunman. And he came and spoke about how he has forgiven the gunman for taking his wife's life, and how they have developed a relationship with him in prison. It was really a powerful picture of forgiveness and reconciliation, because that was against the backdrop of some ugly racism as well. He was a black man who forgave a white man who had done something terrible to him. And it was just a powerful event. So this year's event, we're talking about building a legacy and how we can kind of pass on what we've learned and how we grow and develop to the next generation.
Okay. Okay. So I think you just gave me an idea for a question for you.
All right.
So 10 to 15, 20 years from now, what is Andy's legacy?
That's a great question. Sometimes I think that's a question I think too much of, and sometimes I think that's a question I don't think enough of. I would like to leave a legacy, not necessarily of building something big in scope and transformative in action, but I would like to leave a legacy that spoke to some of the internal traits and stuff that drive me. Whether my church is here 2 generations from now, who knows? Whether Better Man is, whether Leadership Seminole is, all that kind of, who knows? But whatever will be 2 generations from now, whatever that expression looks like, I'm not quite sure I'm concerned about what it looks like as much as I am that it's run in the right way, that it's a place where character matters, where integrity matters, where humility is valued. And so I would like to be remembered as someone who served, who made a difference because they lived with integrity and character and humility. So I would like my legacy to be built around how I lived rather than what I built.
Okay, very good answer. Very good answer. And I love how you kind of even incorporated probably some of your personal core values into what you want to build in there. Now, I have a 6-year-old, as you know, almost 6-year-old, and managing life and business is tough. But you do so much more than most people. How do you manage your personal life while juggling everything you do?
Sure. Couple of thoughts on that. The first has to do with priorities, right? And the first question is what's really important to me, and how do I express that importance in my life? So for me, my faith is a huge driver. And so the first thing that I do every morning when I get up, and I'm an early riser, I get up at 5 o'clock, is I will spend some time in devotion and going over some disciplines that I've built into my life before kind of doing some workout stuff and things like that. And then the next most important thing in my life is my family. And so I want to prioritize them. My son has his birthday this Wednesday, and this is a busy week for me, but I'm saying, no, my children and my family are most important, and therefore everything else can wait. And I'm going to give that time to my son. So I think the first thing is establishing priorities and making sure that you've got those first priorities in your calendar first. And what I find is that once I prioritize what's important, all the other things kind of fall into place after that. I always get kind of a little bit nervous around people who don't know what their priorities are, because we live in a world that's competing for our time and our money and our resources and our priorities. And unless we're on the front end of that, very often what happens is that the various demands of life will tell us what needs to be important to us. And I think we've got a responsibility to drive that rather than letting the busyness of life drive that.
Okay. Now, based off kind of like your answer there, it almost sounds like your morning that gets your day off right follows kind of like the Miracle Morning. I don't know if you've read that book.
I haven't, no. But I find as I get older that having a rhythm and a routine in life is incredibly important, not just to manage the responsibilities, but to take care of my mental health as well. So I'll get up at 5. I've got a number of disciplines and devotions that I will do. By 6 o'clock, I'm normally out doing some kind of exercise, normally running around the streets, listening to some podcasts, things like that. Then between 7 and 8, I'll kind of shower, have some breakfast, and I'll start my day at 8. Normally in the morning, I structure my day to do study, which is obviously an important part of my kind of preaching every week, administrative tasks, those kind of things. Normally the afternoon, I spend in people interaction, whether that's some kind of counseling, some things like this, some meetings. Then the evening, I tend to relax a little bit, do some family stuff. Have a very stringent reading discipline. We're about halfway through the year. I just finished book 30. I aim for 50 a year. And then I'll normally go to bed, honestly, pretty early, about kind of 9:30, unless there's a really compelling show on. But again, I find that having a disciplined day and a routine and a rhythm is real helpful to balancing my life and maintaining my mental health in the middle of lots of balancing.
Awesome. So before we end, is there anything you would like to share with our audience?
Well, I'm excited to find out who our audience is, Tim, and I know you are as well. I think I would say, again, knowing you and knowing that initially a lot of your audience will come from you, and because of who you are, and you are a very communication-minded person as well, involved in lots of different facets of our community. I think my encouragement to those who are listening would be to get involved. Probably, if there's something you like about this interview, it's that we're talking about community. If you know and love Tim, it's probably because of his involvement in the community. And I think we would both want to invite you to get involved. There's a place for you to make a difference. You have gifts and talents that you can use to make this world a better place. And it is an exhilarating joy and a fun-filled thrill to do so. So if you're listening today, my simple encouragement, I'm sure, Tim, you would echo this, is find a way to get involved, find a way to make a difference, find a way to add value.
I couldn't have said it any better. Again, thank you so much for coming out today. And thank you everyone for watching episode 1 of Face of the Community. Look forward to seeing you on episode 2.